Good afternoon. Today's topic, which is I've been asked to talk about, is difficult conversation. So first of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. I did not know, but you know what? Going forward, I will attend this religiously. This is pretty good. So let's talk about difficult conversation. And when we talk about difficult conversation, how we define difficult conversations? Any we can have multiple synonyms. We can have debate, argument, discussions, conversation, heart to heart, convincing. But at the core of every difficult conversation, it lies one idea: is that we have to influence others to follow our thought process or our idea. I think that what makes it difficult. The degree of difficulty can be different, can be more or less, but at the core, this is what I feel is we are trying to influence our boss, our parents, our kids, basically our surrounding. And why we think it is difficult? Um, Maybe because many times we are not convinced ourselves about the idea what we are planning to present. It's half-baked concept sometimes. Sometimes we are not clear about what to ask. Sometimes we don't know how to position it right, or how to ask questions and what to ask. Sometimes we are not balanced or grounded in our assessment, right? I can go to my boss and say, "Hey, I need 25% raise." Yeah, sure, it's a good ask, but what are the rationale behind it, right? Um, Next point is, we don't rationalize. Of course, this is not a comprehensive list. This can go on for few pages and few slides, but these are some of the core ideas about why conversation becomes difficult. So in my 20 minutes or 15 minutes, I'll try to explain you, and I'll try to give you a model. Some of you already might have heard about it, and if you haven't, I think it's a fantastic model which I personally use. I'm using it from last at least 3 to 4 years, and it has yielded some very good results for me in my personal life as well as my professional life. Um, so, what's the right model for measurement? That are we rationalizing it right? Are we balanced in our approach? It's unfortunate that we have been taught that our measure of success is what's my salary and what's my job title. That's what defines me, right? That's not true. That is absolutely not true. Maybe a better measurement includes, along with job title and salary, say, what am I doing what I'm liking, right? How is my mental health? How is my physical health, right? Am I getting some free time to spend with my loved ones? Now, is that a better measurement? Yes, but is that the ultimate measurement? Let's go through it. I would like to introduce a concept. It's called as Ikigai, and there are many books written on this. This is not a new concept. This is a Japanese concept which is centuries old, but you'll be surprised that even this centuries old concept we can absolutely apply to our modern world or our modern life. I was going through some tough time in my personal life, and I came across this, and from that day I started using this um, to measure myself, right? Whether I'm balanced in my approach or not. And I started sharing this with my team. Actually, that's how I got plugged into this forum. I talk about this model with my team on one-to-one, even my friends and my colleagues. So I will give you all the references at the end, which you can go. But just to introduce, Ikigai is a Japanese term. Iki means life, and Gai means what's the purpose of our life. But the basic concept is the state of well-being. And Ikigai concept believes in flow. If I say, hey, what? Many times we use this term saying, hey, he's in his flow, he's in himself, he is doing great. But why? How you define that flow? So flow occurs, when we are consistently doing what we like to do and what we are good at, right? That's when flow happens. Sometimes I came from a hardcore development background, and I can see that when that developer or programmer is sitting on his desk and he's into it. You can see that, what, that doesn't matter what's happening around him. He's just in his flow, right? And we all should strive to get into a flow um, very occasionally, and that helps us to perform at our best. Again, Ikigai is a very deep concept. I will go through this in maybe a 10,000 feet level, which will help you understand the basic building block. But if you have any questions, absolutely, follow up with me after this presentation, and I can give you some more details. Um, One unique concept of Ikigai, which I like or which I love, is that it's not just about our personal selfishness, right? It also considers, you know, what value we are bringing to our surrounding, to our society, to our country, to our world. And that is a very important concept which I believe we all have to delve into. So Ikigai, for the discussion for this purpose, it's a framework to introspect, right? The topic which I'm presenting is, how to do difficult conversations. That's an in general topic, but the first thing is, before we start doing difficult conversations with others, we have to do a very rationalized, difficult discussions with ourselves, right? To identify what we are looking at, what exactly we are after. And this framework, I believe, gives you a good fundamentals, right? Where we can have a very balanced approach in what we are asking for and how we are asking. So at the core of Ikigai, there are four concepts. First is, there are like four circles. I'll show you presentation very quickly. So there are four circles. The first one is what you love. Second is what you're good at. Third is what the world needs. And fourth is, of course, a very important factor nowadays, or from centuries, is what we can get paid for, right? And the only thing which is eternal to us is what we love. But whether we like it or not, the other three in blue, we can fine tune, but we can't control it. We have to mold ourselves around it, right? What world needs, we can't define it. Worlds define that. What you get paid for, yes, you know what? If you are good at certain things, and if that you choose as career, we'll get paid for it. Now, let's say example of what you love doing and what you are great at, right? The intersection of that is passion. That's what we define as passion. Second is, what world needs something and which you love to do. Like if you want to get rid of hunger around the world, right? Yeah, that's what world needs. And if you're good at doing certain things, I mean, we saw this in pandemic, right? In New York, I read a lot of articles where restaurant owners, right, especially and notice this, restaurant owners who are cook themselves, right? They made this change where they started cooking for people on the road, right? The restaurant chains which are owned by millionaires or billionaires did not do that. But see, that's the difference between when you love doing certain things and world needs it, that becomes your mission. What you are great at, and if you get paid for it, right? Majority of athletes, majority of founders, they are great at doing certain things, and you know what? They get paid for it. That becomes a profession, right? And of course, what world needs, even though we do not like doing it or we are not great at it, and we get paid for it, that becomes our vocation, right? So that is the basic building block of Ikigai. Let's delve a little bit more into this. So at the beginning of the presentation, we asked few questions to ourselves, saying, "Hey, how I can be balanced, how I can be clear, how I can position certain things in the right manner." And we said, maybe this is a model, which I believe is not. This is a better model, but I don't think so. It encompasses everything. So my view is, let's look at the holistic approach of you, right, about how to be balanced in life. This is what Ikigai represents. I think we covered some of the intersections of like passion, mission, profession, but let's look at this intersection. I hope you can see my mouse movement. I didn't have any other graphic to do, but I said I will just do it with mouse movement. Well, you know what? If you are at the intersection of what you are good at, what you love doing, and you're getting paid for it, I think you're absolutely satisfied. But you know what? You have this that, hey, you know what? I'm because you're outside the circle of what world needs. You may not have that fully satisfaction that, hey, you know what? I'm influencing. I'm doing a good influence on the world. So that's the intersection. If that's where you are in your career or in your personal life, then figure out what we need. Take another example where you are good at what you do, you get paid for it, and that's what the world needs, which is this interaction. But you know what? You don't like, or you don't love what you're doing. So of course everything is great, but you feel that emptiness, right? Hey, listen, you know what? I'm not doing what I like to do. Um, Third thing, and this is very important. This applies to some of us, and I believe that we should absolutely make every attempt to come out of that. If you see the interaction of what we love to do, what the world needs, and you get paid for it, great. If we can put everybody on mute, that will be awesome. Um, so if you see this interaction of pink, green, and yellow, basically what you are good at is outside that periphery. So what happens is you're excited because you're doing what you love, but you know what? Unfortunately, we are not good at that, and that brings some insecurity. Hey, you know what? I'm liking what I'm doing. I get paid for it. This is what world needs, but it gives us that insecurity feeling, right? So now you know that this four circles become so complex to understand. But once you understand it, it gives a lot of clarity. So let me pose this some difficult questions based upon where we are in our life, right? And that will help you to position yourself when you talk to your peers, your boss, from professional life perspective. It will also help you to manage your expectations at home, in personal life. So some of the questions is, you know what, if you are at a point where you're satisfied, but you feel that you do not have enough impact on the world, then ask that question. And you know what, you can replace. It says what the world needs. You can replace that with what my organization needs, what my family needs, what my team needs, right? And ask question that am I happy with my circle of influence, right? The daily work which I do, am I influencing enough around? Am I using my strength or skills which I'm good at? If not, then find out what we are good at and see whether how we can leverage that strength. You know, I may get promotion, but will I lose anything if I get more compensation or maybe a promotion or a different job? Again, what my world company organization team needs, right? Am I doing what I mean? Define that at the atomic level, right? I mean, sometimes it may be organization, sometimes it's just need, sometimes it's team, sometimes it's family. Am I too secure in my job or role? Which is okay. I mean, we should be secure in our job, but it means do I see a career path? You know what? Sometimes I get this all the time where, hey, you know what? One of my friends resigned. He went to a different company and he's getting 10% raise. Yeah, sure. You know what? That's good. But think, is that 10% in short term? Are you hurting your long term perspective, right? Are you hurting your long term probabilities because because you're already in the right organization, right? The other side of it, there's a difference between being secured in my job and being comfortable in my role, right? Yes, we are very comfortable in our role, but then are you outside? Do you want to pull yourself outside your comfort zone and learn more and more, right? Which increases your security. We got promoted, we got 20% raise. You know what? We went to a different company, but is our work-life balance good, right? These are all the questions which I would ask myself before I make any kind of decisions. So in the end, you know what? Use this Ikigai model to add your questions, your concern, and introspect before we start conversation with peers, bosses, or family members. These are the two references which I would highly recommend if you like this concept. These are two books which I normally follow a lot. Ikigai, and it is nothing about technology. It is nothing about professional life. It's just about your holistic approach towards life. And second book is absolutely fantastic, right? The Flow. Sometimes we try to force something on ourselves which we don't like doing, and you know what? People spend life getting into flow, but it doesn't happen. But this book shows you certain technique where you can fine tune. You can't fundamentally change certain things, but you can fine tune and get into flow. I did not introduce myself, but you know what? If you have any questions, that's my coordinates. You can reach out to me here. And that being said.
Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Alyssa Huber. I am a practice manager on NetSuite's Shared Resources team, which is a very long way of saying I get to mentor, coach, and lead consultants. So I have a team of about 50 consultants in Austin, Denver, and Nashville. So as Sandy said a little bit earlier, I'm going to talk through successfully navigating difficult conversations with colleagues in particular. So to start off, I want to talk through a little bit about my own career journey and my own life to put some context behind the tips that I'm going to share with you today. So I was one of those 15-year-olds, as soon as I could get a job, I got a job. I got a job working in restaurants. I worked in the hospitality industry all through high school, through college. And then I actually made the decision to drop out of college at 21 and start my own business. And I did that for about 2 years. And I loved it. I learned a ton, but I really missed working with teams. I went out and I started interviewing, and I landed a job managing food and beverage at a W hotel. And at the time, I became the only woman manager and the youngest manager. So I really identified with those two aspects of potential difficult conversations that I was going to face. Nothing about that held me back, though. I continued on. I opened hotels, I opened restaurants, and opened chains. And then took that experience from that career and I applied it to other businesses. So I worked with a wide variety of customers. I worked with property managers, and I worked even with a construction company. I took a failing construction company and I turned it around to be a business that could turn a profit. Another typically male-dominated industry, but nothing about that scared me. It was really exciting to be able to add some diversity to an industry that really needs it. You know, I got to a point where I really then wanted to work in tech. So I had a couple of careers at this point, and I said, you know what, I really want to work in technology. I don't know what that looks like. And I did what a lot of people would consider taking a step back. So I left leadership roles and I started to build my foundation from the ground up. My initial company I worked with, we worked with tradesmen to do inventory. So there's photos of me like in the back of plumbing trucks doing inventory with technology. And that brought me here. So that brought me to Oracle NetSuite now again, where I'm able to be leading teams and doing what I love, which is having an impact. So I like to say have an impact on the people on my team, our process, and then also our product. And, you know, I share that journey with you for a couple reasons. You know, one, I would say as you are interviewing, as you're landing jobs, as you're building your career, you may get that dream job. And that dream job may be your dream job for the next 15, 20 years, which sounds like forever, but it could be, right? And it may not be. Your dream job and what you really want to do in 5 years from now absolutely may change. But what I encourage you is learn all that you can in the job you're in now. Learn all that you can as the person you are now, and start to build a toolkit through investing in yourself. You know, if you think about what Ramon was talking about, finding that passion, right? Be passionate about what it is that you do. And as that evolves and as that changes, as you have those difficult conversations with yourself, you can change, you can adjust. Be kind to yourself as you're building this toolkit, as you're shifting around, but also recognize the power that comes in your diverse experiences that you bring to the team. So with that, it also gives you a little bit of context for some of the tips that I would really like to share with all of you today. The first that I will start with is we are all human at the end of the day. So when you're considering having a difficult conversation with another person, I encourage you to invite empathy and vulnerability to that conversation. You have the opportunity to set the tone. When you open the conversation and you're vulnerable, which a lot of difficult conversations feel very vulnerable. But when you start off that way, you're honest, you're vulnerable, you open the door for the other person to feel and do the same. And same with empathy, right? I like to say, zoom out, put yourself in their shoes. How would you want somebody to have this conversation with you? What might that conversation look like? And think through that. I think also in considering humanity, you have the opportunity to set the stage for mutual respect. I have found that some people, they give respect to everyone. You don't have to ask for it. And other people, you do kind of have to ask for that respect. And you have to set the tone of this is going to be a respectful conversation that we're going to have today. I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to be vulnerable, but we're also going to respect each other and we're going to treat each other fairly. The next tip that I would share with you is to have a team of allies and advocates. Now, what does that mean? I really like to think of it as consider who are your cheerleaders, right? Who are your cheerleaders? If you're in the boxing ring, who are the people that are wiping your sweat, that are feeding you water, that are pumping you up and getting you excited and believing in you? You need those people in your corner. And you also need people that are the coach. And what I mean by that is you need the people that are there cheering you on, but will also be able to step back and say, hey, maybe I don't think that landed the way you want it to. Let's talk about it. Let's continue this conversation. So they're not just appeasing you, they're not just telling you everything you want to hear. They're also having difficult conversations back with you. So you want to have these people in your corner, and you guys may have these people in mind. You may already have them, you may not. So some things that I have found helpful to look for as I'm gathering these allies and advocates for myself is who are people that I admire. And me in particular, I really do admire people that are advocates for others. Are they the person that in a large meeting will pause someone who tries to interrupt another person? Right? They step up to the plate and fill that role. I gravitate towards people that I really admire. Maybe they've had a difficult conversation with me. Maybe I've witnessed them having a difficult conversation and I really appreciated how they handled it. Those are the types of people that I like to have personally as those allies and advocates. Now you may think like, why is that important for a difficult conversation? Which leads me into kind of the next tip that I would have is once you have those allies and those advocates, you can prepare for this conversation. So, if you build off of what Hamang started, you have those kind of difficult conversations with yourself. You have a little bit more confidence, and now you're going to prepare for a conversation. You have trusted people that you can rely on to advise you going into that conversation. And what that looks like when you're preparing, maybe you're talking it through. I said earlier, we're all human, right? We have good days, we have bad days, we have days where we're on the verge of tears, and we have days that you could throw anything at us and we'll get it all done. We're all human, but it is important to talk that through with people that you trust, people that you know are going to give you quality advice and you value their advice. As you're starting to have difficult conversations, role play. It can feel a little bit weird, right? That you're having this big conversation, but it can help you get the concepts out of your brain, out of your mouth, the way that you want to be able to express it. And you can kind of ask that person, hey, how did you receive that? Was that good? Did I maybe offend you in how I delivered that? How could I deliver that better, right? You don't want to have a difficult conversation to set up another difficult conversation. Having those prepared conversations with allies and with advocates is really going to give you a lot more confidence going into that difficult conversation, right? You want to be confident, but you also always want to remain authentic to yourself. So in the advice that you get from them, make sure that you're weaving it into a conversation in a way that still feels true to you and still feels good. I can share with all of you that managing difficult conversations, it comes with time. At least it did for me. This was not something that at 23, when I was managing food and beverage, I was just having all the difficult conversations. I would say I maybe spoke up 5 to 10% of the time. And I look back at that 23-year-old and I'm like, oh man, I really wish I would have spoken up more. But now I look at the breadth of experience that I've acquired and I have more tools in my toolkit. I'm more confident going into those conversations. So I said it earlier, but be kind with yourself, one, when you're preparing for these difficult conversations, but then when you're going into it, and know that this is ongoing. Difficult conversations never end. You won't always know how to handle every single one, but you're going to continue to build that toolkit for yourself. And on that, I will share one of my favorite infographics, which is growth and comfort sitting down at the table and having maybe a difficult conversation themselves. And they're saying, this is just not going to work out. Sometimes it really takes us being uncomfortable to become stronger. Know that when you come out of a difficult conversation, you will be stronger. You will have an additional tool in your tool belt. And you will be more confident, maybe even now that you can be that ally and that advisor to another person. Difficult conversations are just that. They can be difficult, but I really encourage you to have them, to try, right? Like I've experienced many things in my life from the lens of being a woman and being young, being a younger person on the team. I have not experienced that as a person of color. And it's so important to me that my teammates have those conversations with me, open up that door, and that's how we learn. I am so grateful for all the conversations that I'm able to have with my team, so I can at least try to bring that lens to my next difficult conversation. So it might be a little bit uncomfortable, but having those conversations really is how we grow. And the last tip here, we can only control our reactions, right? So we control our energy, we control our message and our responses. We cannot control their reaction. We really can't. We can control how we have that conversation. We can control what I call being our brand. But I really want to encourage you that regardless of the quote unquote outcome, right, of the conversation, how that person reacts, you've already made a huge step. You've advocated for yourself, you've gained strength, you've gone through this experience now and can pull from it the next time, and you have another tool for yourself. It's so important to be your own advocate. We want to have those people in our corner, but we need to be that person for ourselves too. So the last slide here, just key takeaways to recap our time together. One of the philosophies I like to have in the back of my mind at all times is be the change you wish to see. I'm not perfect, we're all human, but I really try to be that person that I would want on the other end of the conversation, be the leader that I would want to have, be the advocate or the cheerleader that I would want to have. And recognize within that I'm setting the standard. When you start that conversation, when you're preparing for that conversation, and then when you're having the conversation, you set the standard, you set the stage, and you set yourself up for success in advocating for yourself. So we want to introduce empathy and vulnerability, bring that to the table, set the stage. Don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, but remain empathetic for the other person. You want to invest your time and energy in trusted allies and advocates. It's really important for those tough conversations, but generally in your career, in your life, in having balance at work and at home, it's so important to have those people in your corner. Recognize what I call the power of prep. So prepare for these conversations and prepare in a way that you are confident walking into that conversation, knowing that you are being true and authentic to yourself, regardless of the outcome. Grow through discomfort and explore new territories. Continue to face your comfort zone. Go outside of the comfort zone. That is truly where that magic happens. And last, you control your story. You control the narrative. You control your story. Be that advocate for yourself. So please be confident in yourself, in your journey, and I hope these tips help you walk strong and confident into your next difficult conversation.
Some great panelists that I have to follow up. I'll do my best. They were awesome. I'm going to talk about difficult conversations with managers. So my name's Laura Flores. I'm a business operations manager, but I've been in sales leadership and an individual contributor. I've managed all different types of people, and I've also been managed by all different types of people. So I wanted to share some tips on how to navigate these conversations. I know they can be very, very scary for a lot of different people. And so I think just remembering to be confident in those conversations, like everyone said before, is important. But sometimes we can take extra steps in order to make sure that we are confident by preparing, kind of like what Alyssa was talking about. So okay. So first off, you're not alone. I love these stats because I think, especially with remote work, there's a lot of people who are feeling really isolated. I think even with Zoom and being able to get on virtual happy hours and things like that, people are just feeling a little alone. They're feeling a little left out of the loop. It's been a little bit harder without being in the office to communicate. It's just natural. 65% of employees want structured feedback at least once a month. So if you feel like you're being high maintenance, that's actually not true. 65% of employees actually want, feedback monthly, and this is structured feedback. Hey, this is what I think you're doing well, this is what I think you're not doing well, and here are some action plans in order to do that. Not just, hey, great job. That's not structured feedback. So that's a really big number, and that's amongst all generations of employees. And then likewise, 54% of employees, they just don't really have any idea of what their promotion path looks like. I think companies have done a lot better job of making sure that this is transparent and clear, but at the same time, there's also going to be managers who are really busy, who sometimes forget to take time to talk to their employees about this and what those steps are. And there's still companies who are still trying to figure it out. So that's a really big number. So if you're looking at your team, half of them aren't sure what their next step is going to be, or even how to get there, or how to start that conversation. So I really think a lot of people don't know this. I think a lot of people assume that everyone else on their team knows what they're doing, and that's just really not true. So I wanted to share those with you guys. Difficult conversation can be a lot of things. A lot of times we think, oh, I need a pay raise, I need to be promoted. Hey, I need more time with you, Mr. Manager or Mrs. Manager. But for a lot of people, it can also be like, for example, my husband's right behind me, so he'll probably say something to me, but once I'm done, but he has a really hard time asking for time off. Sometimes people feel like they need to be working all the time. So that is an example of a smaller difficult conversation. So it really can be anything. People have different comfort levels. People have different relationships with their manager. One big one that I get, because I do mentor a couple of people, and I do have conversations with former people that I've worked with a lot, is that they are wanting to take on additional responsibility because they're not feeling challenged. They may be thinking of leaving. They don't know how to approach something like this. So it's important to understand that what might be difficult for you is not difficult for someone else and vice versa. So your manager might think that it's not a big deal that you made a mistake, but you think it is, and it's causing you a lot of anxiety, and vice versa. So I really want to hit home here that these can look all different sorts of ways, and it's okay. You know, we're all different. Like Alyssa was talking about earlier, we're all human and we all have different comfort levels. And I think that it's important to understand that difficult conversations can mean a lot of different things. So this is where I kind of want to put some concise, I actually put this together with my mentor a few years ago because as a manager, I've made mistakes. As a direct report, I've made mistakes. I've always been a super blunt, outspoken person that has gotten to me in trouble many times, but it's also been like my saving grace. But one of the things that I felt that I'm seeing a trend with the people that I mentor, and not only that, with my mentors that I look up to, is a lot of people don't have an action plan. So I like acronyms. So you're going to prepare for your date, right? And this is really important. If there's anything you get out of this session, I want it to be D and E. Okay. So I'm going to go down through the list. The first is data. Data is so important to managers because they're really busy. And I know everyone is busy, but frontline managers particularly, right? They have the hardest job in the world. I actually, Mark Hurd and had a roundtable a few years ago with a bunch of frontline managers, and he said that the frontline manager is the hardest role in the world. So bringing data is super important to drive home your point, not only to help your manager see where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do, but it also makes you feel more confident. Like, hey, I was a top performer the last 4 quarters, and I deserve this raise. And here are the numbers to back it up. So bring some data. I always create a file, organize documentation. I usually print it. Obviously, that's hard right now because we're in the pandemic. Email it to your manager. It will make a huge difference. And it will also see that you put time and thought into the conversation versus just saying, oh my God, I'm upset. I need to talk to you right now. Or I need more time with you and I feel like I'm not getting it, right? You want to make sure you have some documentation there. Always set an agenda. So I get calendar invites all the time that don't have an agenda. And when you're really busy, as a lot of you guys are, and you see that, you're not what it's about. This can just help set the tone and make sure that you aren't going off on tangents. It can be broad. You want this to be conversational, but you also want to be able to stick to your talking points because, as you'll see on the next slide, emotions can run high in these types of conversations and you can sort of get off track. Time and day is not really that important. We just have to put it in there because you need to ask your manager for some time. I always try to ask for 15 minutes, depending on what your manager's schedule looks like. Some managers are obviously busier than others, but if it is truly important, your manager should take some time to hear your concerns. Managers also get anxiety, so make sure that you say, hey, you know, it's not a huge deal. Here are the talking points I want to go through. So, you know, I know not a lot will admit it, but hey, I want to talk to you. Oh, something's going on, or maybe they're not happy, right? Maybe they are taking a role somewhere else. So just make sure that you're clear with, you know, your agenda and get some set time so that you can talk through it together. The last one, so I said D and E, remember those. If you don't have a mentor, you need to get one. They're extremely important. You need to get one that has the same background as you. So I have a Latina executive as one of my mentors. I talk to her probably once or twice a month. It really just depends. And I also have someone with a completely different background, and it's a completely different field from me so that I can get multiple perspectives. Sometimes it is good to just see someone else's perspective. I actually just talked to someone yesterday. They're about to ask their manager for a raise, and they called me. They set some time on my calendar and we went through the steps and what they needed to do. So it was really good timing for this presentation. It is very important for you to engage someone who has more experience. And you don't need to call them your official mentor. You can just call someone up. Most people are willing to help. I will totally walk through it with you if you need someone and you don't know who to ask. I love helping others with this type of stuff. It makes me feel really good. And I'd imagine most people feel the same way. So make sure you're engaging someone else to practice with. I think Summer put in the chat earlier to role play. That's a perfect example of why or how you can practice for your conversation. Remember while you're talking that you need to be crisp and concise. I have some book recommendations at the end that I'll share, but you just want to make sure that you're short and sweet. I put a little example on there. You always want to make sure to allow your manager to get their perspective. If they're not able to voice what they think of the situation, then there's a chance that they might get defensive, or maybe they feel like they're not being heard as well. So everyone is different in this world. And so we want to make sure that it's a very fluid back and forth conversation versus us just going into saying, hey, I'm upset because you did X, Y, Z. One of the things we already talked about emotions earlier, honesty really just creates trust. When you're focused on the facts and you're honest with your manager, it does create trust. I remember one time I was going on a vacation and I told my manager that I was going to be gone for 10 days. And he said, well, where are you going? Oh, well, I'm going to go to Italy and I'm going to have my phone off. And he really always, instead of, just making up some crazy story about why I couldn't be online or something like that, I think he really trusted me after I was just very, very upfront with, what I needed. And he knew that he could count on me to tell the truth. So be honest. I have never had a situation where being honest didn't do what was the best thing for me. And the last thing I'll say is document and recap the conversation. Bring a notebook. There was a SVP that I worked with, and he said, always bring a notebook to meetings. So make sure that you do that. I always do that. It doesn't matter who the meeting's with. I want to make sure that they know that I'm engaged, that I'm taking notes. It doesn't matter what level. That's something that I always do. And just remember, your feelings are probably valid. Actually, they are valid. We're all humans with different types of emotions, different backgrounds. If something upsets us, that's not for someone else to decide. And if we upset someone else, that's not for us to decide if that was supposed to upset them, right? You're not perfect either. So make sure, this goes back to the mentorship, that you pick someone like Alyssa said, who's also willing to say, I'm not sure if this is the best time for you to bring this up, or, hey, how about we tweak some things a bit? So just remember that it's okay we need more people to care about their jobs. So if you're upset or you're feeling emotional about something, that really just means that you really care about your work, and that's not a bad thing. This is an example agenda. It's super basic, but some people like to see it. I've sent it to a couple people. It's just very, very general between me and my employee, Billy. And it was just, hey, this is the calendar invite. This is what we're going to talk about. Last but not least, here are some books. The first one, Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goldman. I know everyone brings this book up. This book single-handedly changed my life. I've always been a pretty good employee and a hard worker, but I've also been a very feisty worker, or someone who maybe wasn't emotionally intelligent enough. And I'm okay to admit that. I've gotten a lot better. Please read it if you haven't. It is so good. And then the last one is Simply Said by Jay Sullivan. This allows you to be concise and crisp with your ask. It allows you to communicate better. It's a great book. I love it. It's helped me a lot, especially when I'm writing down emails and I have this huge paragraph and I'm like, wait a minute, I need to go back and, readjust a little bit. So these are two books that I highly recommend. Like I said, the first one, everyone tells you to read, and there's good reason for that. It's a great book. Please read it, especially if you're having some trouble with controlling your emotions at the workplace because you do care about your job, or maybe you're having some trouble with a coworker or with a manager. This book is a life changer. And that's it. That's all I have.